Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nuna's Nunchi podcast, where I do deep dives and reactions to some of our favorite K-dramas with special guests like Jae-young Jen Park. Welcome. She's dialing in from Korea. I want to say, is this my first guest from Korea? Yes. I've had Korean Americans, but super excited. She is a content producer for YouTube, not a YouTuber, content producer for YouTube, and she is based in Korea in Yongsan. So super excited to have you, Jen.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Yes, thank you for joining us. And she's recording late Korea time. But I'm so excited to talk to you because I'd love to get your angle, right? And we know how popular Korean pop culture is. Tell me why you think it's gotten so popular. And I mean, it's become this global phenomenon. What's your opinion on that?
I honestly think the OTT platforms have played a really big role. And I also think like K-dramas have this sense of like our culture in them. And our culture is very family based, very love based, like romantic relationships, and also like very deep friendships. So I think those kind of like maybe somewhat fragile emotions that are not dealt with in different contents from other countries are dealt with in the K dramas. I really think that is why it's become popular because we deal with the deep emotions.
I love that you said fragile. Ooh, that's such a good word. Is there like a Korean word for that? Fragile?
Fragile, 연약한 maybe.
Oh, young. See, this is why I love talking to you. Our viewers are going to love it. They'll learn some Korean
Yeah.
because that's why sometimes even, and when I watch Korean dramas, I don't know if you probably don't need the subtitles, but I still need them. And sometimes I hear the Korean and going, oh, that's not the right translation. Do you know what I mean? Because Koreans
Yeah.
use such strong language and then they translate to English or whatever,
Yeah.
language. And I'm like, no, 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 that's not right. Have you seen that to be the case? Because sometimes our language in Korea can't be translated. It's hard,
Mhm.
right?
I mean, one of the big things that I wish other, people from other countries know is that how many different curse words we have. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they all give off a very different vibe. But I guess in the English language, there aren't as many to like describe the
Hmm.
actual like connotation of certain curse words.
Interesting.
And to me, like the way Koreans use curse words are really funny, like grandmas or friends, you know. But I guess sometimes in the translations, that kind of uh, funny vibe or even a caring vibe, it doesn't like go through. Kind of
Interesting.
thing.
And are they
Yeah.
really curse words then?
It depends on your mood. It depends on how the person says it. If they're like, so for example, like if they say "어이구 내 새끼," then it's like, "Oh, I love you so much, my little poochie poo." But if it's like, "Yeah, 개새끼야," or something like that, then it's like, "Hey, a
Rat
bad."
or you,
Yeah,
yeah, worse than that.
yeah.
You're right. Iseki, let's talk about that word because yes, I know it's kind of sounds a little, but because in K dramas, and I know international fans will recognize it because they
Mhm.
say in the translation is child, but I see it as, so I think to get to your point, the curse words that sound like literally curse words, they're not really in depending on the context.
Mhm.
Meaning when they say neseki and they're talking about something, a loving moment, they're talking about love and their
Yeah.
actual like, right? Their actual,
Uh-huh.
well, what's it, what do you call it? Their actual offspring,
Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's other ways, you're right. Seki means bad.
Yeah. Means bad.
Um, I love that you shared that. Thanks for bringing them up. Are there other words you can think of that you're like has really multiple meanings
Mhm.
that aren't always conveyed in K dramas?
I think you actually dealt with this a lot, like Chong,
Mm,
really big thing, and Han. I think you dealt with that too, right?
yeah, it's so
Yeah.
complicated. I still feel like we need to
Hmm.
talk about it,
Yeah, actually, I took a class actually in Korea about about K culture, and even in that class, like we couldn't really define it 100%. It's just,
Thank you.
yeah.
That made me feel better because I was like, how do I explain this? You know, the best way. So in that culture, I mean, in that class, tell me about that class. Why was it so hard to like, what was like the conclusion? Why is it so hard to explain? Because it's a big part of our culture, Korean society.
I think it's because of the history behind it. It's just it's it's very long and very deep. I mean, we are still technically in the middle of war.
Yeah.
And these kind of words come from all the tragedies Korea has been through. And I don't think it's like simple enough to define it. Like I feel like if you go up to a Korean and say, "Can you explain Chong in Korean?" I don't think everybody's gonna have the same explanation.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome to hear. Meaning
Yeah.
it's okay that it's complex. We all have our own. And then how about hun? I mean, is that a word still used in the current culture? Because we know that that's part of the history, but how is it used today?
Han is okay. So what I hear generally if somebody uses Han, it's like in like scary movies where the souls have not yet ascended to heaven or hell, and they say it's because they still have Han. So it's like some unsolved problem
Yeah,
kind of thing.
interesting. Like unresolved anguish or something. Okay, so that's how they're using it today. Interesting. So not relating to like just current experiences. It's only related to films.
Current experiences. Oh, sometimes like if somebody says like 이게 내 한이다. Sometimes they say like this is my han, which also means the same thing. This is something that I couldn't come to a conclusion to. That so like remorse and regret kind of vibe. But I honestly haven't heard the word han from people my age. They're generally from the older folks.
That's good to know. Yeah, and that makes sense to me because I feel like that is the older folks that have kind of maybe lived the war, you know, in the 1950s and 60s and seen a lot of the way Korea kind of started out, or South Korea, right? The divide. But you're right. That's a good point that you said that we're still in the middle of war. That kind of hit me because we don't see it literally, but it's there. So thanks for sharing that. So then let's go into current context of Korea today from your young point of view. Listen, people like me, so I'm like, okay, so you're saying you're on the younger end, but it's very true to share the perspective of millennials or just like, I don't know, 20, 30-year-olds, right? What does that Korean society look today? And I mean, from the perspective of how do they feel about K-dramas? Like, I know that Koreans know how popular they've become. What's the thought from your generation?
We enjoy K-dramas a lot. And generally it's so in Korea, there's this like INSSA and ASSA. So insider and outsider. And generally if a drama blows up, like for instance, Squid Game or like Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha, if you don't watch it, you kind of become an outsider. Because you can't talk about that with the others.
Wow, you have to say, oh, no, asaya.
Yeah. Well, we don't say that. But
oh, you don't say that. You're just thinking.
Kind of like, I mean, I have to be honest. I haven't watched Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha.
It's okay. You're still inside to me. It's okay. We're friends. No, I'm kidding.
Friends.
I mean, yeah, we don't have time to watch all of them, you know, but yeah, I see. So inside ASSA.
But
so
it's
tell me,
like,
yeah,
it's like, it becomes a meme kind of like, so all the popular things right now, Street Woman Fighter is a dance competition show in Korea that's really, really big. It ended. And then Squid Game and Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha. So there would be like memes like everybody watching Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha, Squid Game, Street Woman Fighter, and me, nothing. Those kind of memes would go around, you know?
So I'm going to summarize. It looks like what's happening in Korea, in Korean culture or the society with K-dramas is somewhat similar to globally. We have memes too. You haven't seen Squid Game. What's wrong with you? You know, that kind of thing. And then Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha as well, which is the opposite of Squid Game. And then, well, not the Street Fighter variety show, but generally they're popular variety shows. But I think that's super cool that relatable, because I think that's neat. So thanks for sharing that. Now, currently, obviously this podcast episode will air in a couple of weeks, but we have this big story going on in Korea, but it's not new to Koreans, meaning celebrities and scandals. What's your take on it? And what's, I guess, Koreans' take on it? And this might be a long answer, but let's start from how's it going over there and how's the perspective? Because globally, I'll share my perspective, but what's the Korean perspective on the current actor scandal?
I honestly think it's kind of dying down a little bit. Koreans have a tendency to, like, if something blows up, they would go right to it. Everybody would be a part of it, but it wouldn't last that long. So that kind of happened with him too. And because of the image that he built through 1박 2일, the variety show, which is like very sweet and kind-hearted, like people are like a little bit less attacking towards him. Him.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, what was
I know. So they're a little less attacking towards him. So how would you compare his situation compared to, he's not the first actor, right?
Right.
Or actress. Lots have happened before. So how do you compare it? Do you think this is different?
I don't think it's necessarily different. I think it's that we also have learned that sometimes these accusations are one-sided. So I remember when the first, or like when it started becoming an issue, before I would see people comment like really bad things, just everybody attacking the actor or actress. But now I see like, I'm just gonna wait until they give us an official reply or response. And sometimes they take the actor's side, or they just try to be unbiased before, at least until like official reports come out. So I think that's a very big improvement that the Korean society has made. And it's just, I think this is also because like there were so many scandals. There's my cat.
Kitty cat.
There were a lot of scandals, and sometimes it turned out to be wrong. So those kind of definitely, I think, influenced a lot of the netizens.
Those netizens. I mean, just like anybody, any fans across the world, they're pretty powerful in the sense of what they say. So that said, let's talk briefly though, because this is part of the Korean culture. We saw lots of, and we call it here in the US, cancel culture, right? And maybe that's what they call it in Korea too. Immediately what happened, which we tend to see happen after something, it's not people that cancel him. It's like companies, right? Not just him, actors, actresses, idols going, oh, we're going to withdraw this. Oh, we're going to cancel this. What's the Korean society's take on that? Is that the norm part of the culture that they're like, well, yeah, this is why. I mean, this is, is it like expected, where in the US it's a little different?
I think I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think most of the time people associate the actor or actress to the brand. So a little bit more than they do in the US or other countries, I guess. So basically, they kind of represent the brand and the brand's ideologies and values, kind of. And it's a very competitive market. Getting the celebrities to represent a brand is very competitive in Korea, and definitely really, really influential for the buyers. So I think that is one of the reasons why they were so fast to cancel so many things for him. I think that's the only explanation I can give.
No, that's fine. Now that makes sense, because you can't speak for everybody. How do you feel about when we see in K-dramas, we see the themes of, like you said, people like watching K-dramas that's reflective of our culture, the Korean culture. Do you think the K-dramas of today are fairly accurate? I mean, excluding Squid Game and stuff, but just generally speaking, accurate in what the Korean people are experiencing in life?
I think K-dramas actually try to do that, because in Korea, like, I know Sky Castle wasn't that popular in the US or
Yeah, I
other
liked it,
countries.
but it was hugely popular in Korea, right?
I
Yeah.
think that's because a lot of the people in our society connected to the story on a personal level. So I do think K dramas do try to reflect like what's actually happening in Korea.
And I love that. So what, I know the kitty cat, so cute, so good for our mental health, seeing our animals. Um, what, so then if they reflect so well, the K dramas and K-pop and all that stuff, what are they reflecting? Why don't you talk about that? Why was Sky Castle so relatable?
I guess in Korea, I didn't study here, but I'm just gonna go off of the knowledge that I have. There is a college entrance exam, which only happens once a year,
Hmm.
and basically, if I mean people are really like during the college entrance exam, airplanes are not allowed to land. Like that's how
Oh,
serious
that's
it
right. I've
is.
heard that, but wow,
Yeah.
the country goes silent.
Yeah. I mean, at least around where they take the tests,
Yeah.
So it's very big. It literally can like decide your your life almost, or at least it feels like it.
Mhm.
So a lot of parents are on edge, a lot of students are on edge because we're we're also worried about like the students' mental health after the exams. So it's like really really serious, and there has been like a lot of controversy around that. And Sky Castle was basically about getting into college and the
Mhm.
entrance exam and trying to fight for their try to
Their future, their
yeah,
whole,
future.
yeah,
Like there's
yeah.
and like in Korea, I think the name value of your university is really 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 important.
Mhm.
So those kind of stressful situations, and like how teachers like that famous line is something like "날 믿어봐," like believe me or something in
Mhm.
Sky Castle.
Uh,
uh
what is a famous line?
it's like "절 믿으세요" or something like that.
Oh,
I think it
okay.
was the
Believe me.
teacher.
Ah,
So like trust me, follow what I say, do whatever I say. I think it was that.
for the sake of your future, so you can get
Uh-huh.
into this school. Okay. The
Kind of
three
like that.
schools that are, what, let's name the schools. Seoul,
Yeah.
Seoul National,
Uh-huh.
uh, what's that?
Koryo.
Koryo, and then Yonsei, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Man.
So it's I I actually haven't watched the drama. I just know the memes and know the stories. But they deal with death too, like suicide, I think. And I
I do.
think murder. They
Um, Not so much, kind of, yeah, like without spoiling it. But
Mhm.
that's just one drama. What do you say about some of the K dramas that do show suicide? What How is suicide addressed in Korean culture? Like, is it even mentioned or talked about?
A suicide? No, never. It's a very taboo topic, like in Korean culture.
Interesting.
We it's it's very like mental health is something that we really don't talk about. And sometimes even for me, like I've gone through like depression, I've gone through eating disorders, and I'm pretty open about that. And I really do think people should seek therapy and like professional help if they need it. But if I say that to people, I
Mm.
always have to tell them, hey, going to a therapist, going to a psychologist doesn't make you like cray cray, you know. It's still yeah, it's still a little bit taboo, and people have a harder time opening up to that kind of hospital, I guess.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
therapy, like I would have to persuade some of my friends to go. And
Yeah, because it's still a stigma. Yeah.
mhm,
Even though the K dramas do a good job showing mental health,
mhm,
right? Some of them show mental illness and, see all that. Even though people watch it, they still don't kind of translate it in their own life, is what I'm hearing.
yeah, I think so. Because I think I mean, they do have dramas like Kill Me, Heal Me,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
then
I
it
like
was
that
like
show. There's a lot.
Saran.
It's okay to not be okay.
Oh
Also,
yeah,
express
my
that.
favorite. I love that. Yeah, those kind of things, like it's honestly for me, when I see that, I can see people, I do see people like that in real life, but maybe it's that they don't realize it. Maybe it's that they think they're okay,
Right.
like those kind of things.
And the stigma. They feel like
Hmm.
I have no choice. I can't get help because what are people going to think of me? Or, in the culture. Wow. So you said something very interesting, that suicide is not talked about, but then you do know that, well, this is a fact. The suicide rate is pretty high in Korea.
Hmm. It's really sad.
Interesting, but just not talked about.
Hmm. I I've never had a conversation about suicide here.
Wow. And then yet, well, I know it's not like you watch every K drama, but I want to say it's a theme in a lot of K dramas.
Mhm.
Either someone dies by suicide or someone tries to, hurt themselves.
Uh-huh.
And so if we're talking about mental health, and I love that you're encouraging your friends, what do you think? I mean, you're not an expert, but what can help Korean society address mental health because it's normal?
Um,
Your mind, right?
I think it has to be like a generational change. Like it's like, so how do I say this? Um so
In Korean. That's
yeah.
easier.
No, I actually don't even have the words in Korean. So like
Oh,
my parents,
hmm.
like they supported me when I went to therapy. They supported all of my medical expenses. They even like sent meds from Korea to America because they, I don't know. I don't know why they did that, but
That they were
oh, because
supporting you. They supported
yeah,
you.
they were supporting me, but still they don't really get the concept.
Hmm.
So a very common thing that a lot of Asians in general, or maybe Koreans talk about is like how their family comments on their body. It's a very big thing.
It is.
And I told my dad I had an eating disorder. I told my mom I had this eating disorder, but they would still tell me like, "Hey, you need to lose weight." But they meant no harm. They really didn't mean harm. They were thinking about my health. Like I know my mom and dad. They never meant it because I looked bad. It was like, you need to be healthy. But if somebody tells you you have an eating disorder, you wouldn't say that no matter what. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So it's like those kind of things.
Hmm.
They
Like a
know it's,
disconnect. You had
yeah.
support of your parents, but still they didn't get, I guess they just couldn't connect it to mental health because you know what? It's not talked about in Korea. So how would they know? Right.
But definitely it's getting better. Like I see, I mean, when I go to a therapist, it's always full. It's so hard to get in. It's
Wow.
also because there aren't that many.
Yeah.
It's
But hopefully that field will grow. It's a good
mhm.
field. I mean, there's people needed. Wow. Did you just say it's full? Because that's what it's like in the US, but we have many therapists, but that's just demand is higher because people are more
Mhm.
stressed. But wow. So it's full in Korea as well.
Yeah, at least the ones that I've been to, it's like if I didn't reserve ahead of time, I would have to wait 2 to 4 hours.
Oh, so you can actually, oh, interesting. You could reserve and then just go the day of. Interesting.
Oh, you have to reserve like way back.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I was just
Yeah.
going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks for sharing that, just that perspective. But
Mhm.
why do you think it is getting better? Like what's helping? Why is it shifting?
Um, like you said, I haven't really watched K dramas that dealt with suicide
Mhm.
like very heavily. I think it's more like YouTube, kind of like people coming up, I mean, talking about their mental health on YouTube, on Instagram, social media platforms, like Twitter. Like they would, oh yeah, I feel like that too. And then like they would kind of search it, and then they would watch like webtoons online
Mm.
and
Oh,
like
and when you say they, these are just people,
yeah,
netizens.
yeah, just
Mhm.
people. And then there are a lot of like Instagram comics about that too. So
Yeah, webtoons are so popular, right?
mhm.
Um, Interesting. So that said, how does K-pop, the K-pop idols and K-drama stars, how do they influence mental health, you think?
um I don't know. I don't think they influence mental health. Like, oh, well, as in like they don't. I mean, hmm. Generally, Koreans get angry if something happens to a celebrity that they like.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to call names, but just like if a celebrity that they like struggled with mental issues and then they took their lives, then they would get really angry at the company, the entertainment company, and they would get like search a lot of the things. They would fight all the haters, kind of like online, and actually like and people like actually mourn for some of their like favorite celebrities.
Of course, because they relate to them. And that's like here, I think that's everywhere, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
then plus it's very sad, right?
Mm-hmm.
How, if someone takes their own life. Wow. So interesting. I'm going to repeat what you said, that they get angry at
Yeah.
the companies. Why are they angry at the companies? Just curious.
Because like the celebrities like mental health is very it's not open. It's very closed, and it's like, why didn't you give them the right support? Like, why didn't you take care of the haters? Like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And uh this is like way back, maybe like 20 years back, 10, 20 years back. But Korean, like, especially K-pop idols, they are like the Korean entertainment companies are kind of known to not torture, but like they were known to like give them a really hard time about weight. They're
Mm-hmm.
always comparing each other based on looks and skills. But if you think about them, like when they're training for idols, they're like in middle school.
I know. Oh
So
gosh. I can't imagine when
yeah.
we're hitting puberty. So your
Hmm.
body's already going through a lot. Just saying.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So you said that was 20 years ago. What are the companies? What's it like now then? I know you're not in the
I
companies, but just your assessment or what people say.
I think it's better. I want to believe it's better, but it's not talked about. And there has been cases of like wangta, like bullying among girl groups.
Yes, I've heard
Yeah,
that.
and those
Oh, is
kind
that
of
the
things.
term?
Yeah,
Wangta.
wangta. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
So it's when I don't know, it's like a very complicated topic, and I really don't want to call any names or
Sure.
whatever, but I hope it's getting better. I think it's getting better because yeah, because the culture is changing too.
The culture is changing too. Well, I know this is a dark topic. So let's do something fun and talk about
Okay.
what are some of your favorite K-dramas or K-pop stars, and why? Like, why did you gravitate to this K-drama? Why do you listen to this K-pop? And by the way, do you listen to K-pop? I'm just assuming because
I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but I actually don't really listen to K-pop.
I mean, see, I
But
know, no, that's because I really don't want to assume that everybody does just because they're Korean, right?
Mhm.
What do you listen to then?
Actually, I just go on to like Melon, which is a Korean music streaming platform,
Yes,
and
heard of
then I
that.
just find a playlist and then I just listen to it. And generally they're pop,
But not
but
necessarily
they're
K-pop.
not like they're not like popular pop. They're like
Yeah. Oh,
somebody
I see.
that
They're like, do you also like this, not R&B, is that R&B? Like, because I tend to love like the K-drama OST type
oh
songs
yeah.
too, but those are the real singers. They're like beautiful voices. Like my favorite is Yoon.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 So I love all her songs. I see.
Mhm.
So no, I don't think it's unpopular. I still think that's part of, still part of Korean, music. But what about K dramas? Like, do you have okay. So do you have a favorite K pop singer that you like that you want to educate us on?
I I love BTS.
Okay, that's K-pop.
Yeah, it's K-pop, but I listen to their songs. but
Mhm.
I'm very selective of what I listen to.
Sure.
Yeah. Like
And you
I
should
love,
be. That's good.
yeah, I love the message they're trying to spread. I love their lyrics, but that doesn't mean I have to love all their songs.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And me
Yeah.
too. I have my own picky playlist of their songs as
Yeah.
well, you know? That's awesome. So you're a BTS stan, you're part of the army. Um,
I mean, yeah.
I know, right? The army. Um, so are they just as popular in Korea as they are on globally too? Is it pretty much like across the board?
I mean, I really think they're more popular abroad. Like, yes, they are very, very popular in Korea. I'm like recently it was Jimin's birthday, and
Mhm.
I was near Hybe. I was near their company, and there was a huge like set. It was like a movie set just of him with like a castle and spotlights.
Oh my God.
It was like wow, it's yeah. So I guess they are really popular,
Hmm.
but I
But
think
you're right. There might be some truth in super popular globally too, right? Yeah. So I was
yeah.
curious about that. How about do you have a favorite K drama or something that it really hits you in a certain way that you've watched?
It's okay not to be okay is
Yeah, you mentioned that. Why?
yeah. Well, first of all, like the cinematography was
Yeah,
really good. I loved it. Um, all the clothes.
I know.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah. And then all the symbolisms like of like mental health, like that the butterfly, the books, the stories, the tales. I like fantasy, so that kind of, matches with I guess the overall theme, I guess. And I loved it because like they seemed kind of normal,
Hmm.
but everybody like had a mental disorder, and I think that's kind of like I don't know, I really like that.
Yeah, it shows I guess, what is it? Not just the reality, but like you can have a good life,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the stigma. You could be having a mental illness, which,
Mm-hmm.
but live well. And I think that's part of my job, always saying, hey, I know there's stigma, but just because you're diagnosed with something, just like you have some physical disorder, you can
Mm-hmm.
still live well with a physical
Mm-hmm.
disorder, right? So I hope that, like you said, it's just more education. I think what a lot of my job, even in the US, is educating. And can you
Mm-hmm.
imagine Korea, like generationally, they are not educated on mental health. So we're just beginning in Korea, I think,
Mm-hmm.
in understanding it.
Yeah. And like there's this specific scene in It's Okay Not to Be Okay where it's like at Ko Moon-young's like fan meeting, and she's like
Hmm.
signing the books, and
Yes.
then Sang-tae is the
Yes.
Hyung, right?
Uh-huh.
He kind of, he has a tantrum, and then Ko Moon-young comes down and does the same thing to the normal person, and it just all makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's like sometimes like I liked it. It was kind of like a saida moment. Do you know like what that
No, tell
refers
me
to?
what that means. Haida?
Saida. So basically in Korea there's two terms, like koguma, which is sweet potato, and
Mhm.
saida. They're like opposite to each other.
Uh-huh.
But koguma is sweet potato. So when you eat that, like it kind of gets stuck here, because it's very thick.
Yes.
So you feel very like uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And then if you drink saida, which is Sprite, you like burp and everything goes away. Like
Oh, you're right. Like it releases the gas.
yeah, so it releases that uncomfortableness. So basically, it was like that saida moment.
Oh, I love that. Saida
Yeah,
versus Gokuma, which I love both,
yeah,
thinking about
they're
it.
good.
So she did that Saida moment. You're right. She basically
Uh
normalized
huh.
that. I remember that scene so well. It was very well done. Thanks for bringing that out. I'm gonna have to rewatch again to go, now that was a Saida moment.
Yeah, yeah.
How do they say it in Korean? Like the whole phrase.
They just say "와 개사이다." They put "개" in front of it, which is
Ah,
like
K-Saida.
very.
Ah,
I was
K-Saida.
like, "Wow,
Then
개사이다,"
K,
or
K
something like
Koguma.
that.
Do they say K Koguma?
Oh no, koguma. It's more like it's like 존나 고구마 먹은 것 같아 or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah, but
because it's just still stuck.
they always add little words in front of like the actual word to make it sound more expressive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's very expressive. I love that. I just learned something today. I always have good memories of saida in Korea when I was little. You know, whenever I'd go visit, I would just, they were like, do you want some saida? I'm like, yes, because it's super cool to drink, you know?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I loved hearing your perspective. To sum up, any last words you want to share to, I would just international audiences about Korean culture and K-pop and K-dramas that you feel like that you have a kogama moment that you really want to release to become a saida moment?
I don't really have. It's not as koguma. It's not like uncomfortable or anything, but I know a lot of the dramas that do well abroad are generally like romance based. So I kind of want to let you guys know that even if there if even if a drama is not based on romance, there are really good ones too. And K movies.
Oh, yes. Oh, tons of K movies. Yes. And because of K-pop, K-dramas, K movies are also becoming popular because they're like, oh, let me see Korean movies. Sure. So then you said right now the memes are Squid Game, Ojungo Game, Hometown or Kemal Cha Cha Cha. And then what was the other one?
Street Woman Fight.
Sure, we won the variety show. But Hometown Cha 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 is romance.
Yeah, it's romance.
So why is that so popular in Korea? I guess it's because Kim Seon Ho, Shin Min-ho.
I mean, it's also like romance in general is like honestly everyone's kind of dating in Korea. It's a really big like thing. I guess not everyone. I'm generalizing, but if you go out in the streets, literally like literally 7 out of 10 people are going to be couples.
Really?
Yeah, so dating culture is really big in Korea. So like I guess that kind of so like romance dramas are also popular here too. So
But I like that message. You're saying there's more to K-dramas than romance. Totally. As we're seeing with the new latest, very big ones like My Name, which is really popular too.
I loved My Name.
Yeah, I know. What did you love about My Name?
I loved how well, first of all, it was a very strong female character, and the villain Chemujin was like lovable, kind of
Yeah,
almost to the point because he never betrays, but he always gets betrayed.
right.
Something
That's a
like
good
that.
point. If you look at it like that, even though what he does is not great, but still, you're right. He's betrayed. He even said that in his famous line, "I'm always betrayed."
Yeah, and it's like that kind of phrase though. It's at least on like it's very talked about a lot. It's common because they say in Korea because we are a little less expressive. So sometimes like people would just say yes to everything, be really nice, but in the end they would just get treated really badly and people would take advantage of them. That kind of concept is really common, I think. So it kind of has Chemujin's vibe, but then there's Han So-hee who is like really strong and she like does what she's going to do. It's like it's kind of like I relate to him and also like you look up to her kind of thing.
Yeah, aspire to be her, but relate to Chimwoo-jin.
Yeah.
I see your point. I did too. I mean, I actually liked him. We're not going to give out spoilers, but I was like, what just happened at the end? You know, I was like, what? Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And then I guess I was going to ask you another question, but I completely forgot. But I really loved hearing just your moments of, living in Korea. By the way, how long have you lived in Korea? I know you studied here in the US, but how long have you lived there now?
In total, I've been here like 15 years.
Oh, wow.
But because I lived here when I was younger.
Okay.
But like since it's been 4 years since I've returned from the US.
Was it hard adjusting back?
Oh, yeah, it's still really hard. Like the culture, it's like reverse culture shock for me.
Explain that. Reverse culture shock.
So like when I went to America, everything was open and so expressive. But thankfully, that was okay. Like for me, it was all right. But I did get used to it, and then I developed my personality in a very expressive way. And then when I came back, it's like, no, don't talk, or so,
Wow.
Yeah. So
Right.
it
Don't
was.
be so expressive. It's still like
Mhm.
that, but I hope it does change because we see the K-dramas, they're so expressive,
Yeah.
right? The actors and
Yeah.
actresses. I mean, Han So-yi screaming, or I mean, whatever. Everybody just saying that you don't. I hope that translates into real life. That's
Mhm.
just healthier for
Yeah,
your
it's
mental health.
healthier. I mean, it's definitely like better. I actually, for the past 4 years, I've seen Korea change a lot. Like how they respond to celebrity scandals, like all those patterns were in those 4 years.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
it's so I do see them changing. I mean Koreans, at least even older, like 40s, 50s,
Hmm.
like there's more and more people kind of understanding like life is different for millennials or Gen Zs, and Gen Zs and millennials are being are a lot more expressive too.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
mean, I see good changes, so I'm hoping they continue to change.
Yeah. And it's actually the millennials and zillennials changing things because they're teaching their parents and grandparents to express
Yeah.
now, you know? I hear you.
Hmm.
I'm in the older population, but I grew up American, right? So of course I want to see the young folks helping change the trajectory of Korean culture, you know,
Hmm.
just to modify it, obviously
Yeah.
to come with the times, right? Because Korean culture is beautiful, but then you have to also change where it's needed. So I was
Hmm.
going to say that the dating culture, that's super cool to see. Cause when I was growing up and went to Korea every summer, nobody was dating. I mean, it was like, oh, you know, so how
Oh
did that
yeah.
change?
K dramas. I don't know. I don't know. This is an assumption, but maybe K dramas. Uh. Yeah. Like for me, it was very odd too because I. I mean, I think K dramas do influence them because I know Korean guys are the sweet guys, kind of. They have that kind of, I don't know, stereotype,
Yes.
a little bit
Mhm.
of a stereotype. And it's because that's what they see on the media, all these
Hmm.
nice guys in the dramas. I
Yeah.
don't know, it's
Well,
an
they're nice, but then
assumption.
they're also mean, right? They're mean in the
Yeah.
dramas, but they're really nice inside, you
Hmm.
know, like inside they say all this mean stuff to the women, but then you see them do all this stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's an assumption though, but yeah, definitely a lot of dating. Um, yeah, like
Hmm.
it's it's very unique, I think.
Do you like it? How do you feel about seeing all the dating? I mean, is that something that's cool to see, or like what's your opinion on that?
Um, my I actually don't really have an opinion on that, but I guess for me, um, I hope Koreans are become a little bit more open to all kinds of love,
Hmm.
not just
Oh,
like
all kinds of love.
heterosexual. Yeah. So that's my only hope. Like I love that they're dating. There's so many things you can take away from dating and learn. So,
Mhm. Learn about relationships.
yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Folks listening, this was Jae-young Jen Park, content producer in Korea for YouTube. Super excited to have her perspective, and please listen in. And I just look forward to keeping in touch with you, Jen, and we'll keep talking on Instagram as we do.
Yeah,
But thanks so
always
much
on
for joining
Instagram.
Nuna's Nunchi. Bye.
Bye.
You can listen in on platforms such as Spotify, Pandora, Google, and Apple, but also watch the podcast on our Nuna's Nunchi YouTube channel every Monday, where it launches at 6 p.m. Eastern.